else could it be? For me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Had some technical difficulties with StreamYard just now after I just updated my browser, which seems like an oxymoron, right? You update your browser and then all of a sudden you have issues, which is stupid. But nonetheless, I am in a great mood. Today feels like a Friday, even though it's a Thursday, because there's no work tomorrow. I'll still be working. I'm not off, but it's Juneteenth tomorrow. And everything just feels like a weekend day, right? Today feels like a weekend day. It feels like the end of a week. It's the end of mini camp. We are now one step closer to this team heading to training camp, 35 days away from when this team will report back to Ashburn to start their 2026 campaign. So excited that they were able to make it through the entire offseason relatively unscathed. And also, the vibes are at an all-time high. I mean, coming off of a 5-12 season, I'm not supposed to feel this excited and also confident. There's been a confidence instilled in me by this staff, and a lot of credit, and I've said this a bunch of times, goes to Dan Quinn. And today's episode is going to be largely about Dan Quinn. He spoke to the media to end minicamp and put an exclamation point on the offseason. Everyone's going to get away, have a break, recharge the battery, come back in late July, and then we hitting the ground running, hopefully for the next 8 months, right? From July all the way to February. 7 at the bare minimum, right? But you're hoping to ride this thing all the way into, February into Valentine's Day. That's when you hope you're playing your final game of the season over in LA at SoFi. But ultimately, DQ spoke with the media for over 21 minutes. He had a 21-minute interview with CBS Sports' Evan Washburn, and it is must-see TV. If you haven't watched it, you're doing yourself a disservice. A lot of people have sent me the link to the Commander's Sleeper account, but I don't want that. I want the whole shebang. And I saw that video as I was watching another video yesterday. It was one of the the press conferences yesterday. And I saw that video on the side of suggested videos, and I was like, what's that DQ video? I haven't seen that one before. And boy, was that a great watch or what. And we're going to talk about what he said in that video, because it's that video, that 21-minute video of DQ talking with Evan Washburn. It's that video that makes me feel like my head coach is back. We've talked about us being back. We are back. We're so back. Washington Commanders social media team is so back. Terry McLaurin is so back. Jaden Daniels is so back. The uniforms are so back. We are so back. But you know what? Dan Quinn is so back. And that is so important, because without him, none of this goes, right? As he goes, everyone else goes. He sets the tone for that entire building. And he said some very profound things in that particular video. We're going to get to that a little bit later on. But today was the final day of mandatory minicamp. So I do want to start there. Day 3, the final day of mandatory minicamp, as the team closed the chapter on what was one of the most productive off seasons we've seen here in quite some time. This day was dedicated to the backups. Basically, Ethan Kaliak-Manis and Sam Hartman, the QB3 battle. And I'm probably need to stop putting it in air quotes. There's a real battle taking place, because Ethan Kaliak-Manis may not be ready to be QB3. And John Keim wrote a quick article today basically highlighting the fact that Ethan Kaliak-Manis is behind Sam Hartman in the battle right now. And in my mind, I'm saying, as he should be. If Sam Hartman, who has been here now 3 years, this will be year 3 for him. If he can't beat out a 7th round rookie who a lot of people thought would go undrafted, if he's not ahead of him, even though this is a different offense and everyone's learning this thing at the same time, if he can't be ahead of him going into training camp, the hell is Sam Hartman any good for anyway? So he should be ahead of him. That doesn't mean that's where he's going to end up. It's easy when it's 7-on-7 and there's no pass rush and you've got all the time in the world to stand back there and deliver the football. Sam Hartman can look like an excellent quarterback. But we've seen when there's pressure, he's an undersized quarterback. And when there's an offensive line that's around him and he can't see and his view is being obstructed, he stinks. So I'll reserve judgment on this whole battle until the pads go on, we get into camp. They still can't be touched in training camp, but the pocket can collapse around him, and then you can start to see Sam Hartman making some mistakes. But today, he was, I don't want to say flawless, but he was really good. The 2 quarterbacks, again, took all the reps today, combined for just 5 incompletions, 3 touchdowns and 1 interception. The 1 interception being thrown by Ethan Kaliak-Manis, and the recipient of that interception was cornerback Darius Rush. That's the guy that I talked about that was here last year out of South Carolina, about 6'1", about 190, 95 pounds. So is there a cornerback 5 in the house? We'll see. Darius Rush should be throwing his name in the hat. We know that Fred Davis II made a play on an interception yesterday, or the first day of mandatory minicamp. So right now, Sam Hartman looking pretty good, playing well, good for him, and we'll see what it amounts to as we get into training camp. But the field goal kicking competition, all 6 kicks by both kickers, so 12 in total, all right, were made today. They kicked from distances of 28, 38, 43, 48, and 50. Okay, 28, 38, 43, 48, and 50. They each made all 6 of their kicks. And I think it's a battle that's going to obviously carry all the way through training camp into the preseason. DQ said something that I think is noteworthy during his press conference today. We'll get to that a little bit later on, but it kind of ties into this conversation about when do you know, right? When are these battles going to be settled, and when do you kind of have an idea of when you've made up your mind and it made a decision on who's going to be the starter or who's going to make the roster? In the particular case of the place kicker, there's no who's the starter. There's only going to be one place kicker on this roster. So who's going to get the nod? We'll probably know by the time we get to the second preseason game. But because we'll hear about it. The media will be there every day. We'll have a day-by-day report on who's doing what in practice. And I think practice is going to go a long way. Obviously, kicking in the games are going to have a say-so in it. And we have joint practices lined up this summer, and that'll play into it as well. But I think that the consistency of practice, unlike other positions, specifically like offensive line, third string quarterback, those are positions that I think those scrimmages, the game reps, those are going to go a long way in determining who ends up being the starter or who ends up winning those positions. Whereas I think practice, and I don't want to discount practice at those positions, but I think the practice is where you're going to, because you're not going to get a lot of kicks in the game, more likely than not. You may get 2 field goal attempts in a game, right? So the practice setting is going to be huge for the kickers because you control how many kicks they get in that environment. Whereas in a game, they may not kick the ball at all other than kicking it off. Remember, did we score against the Patriots last year at all? I think we might have scored once. We got drubbed in that game. The kickers had little to no effect. Matt Gay missed the kick, though. I remember that very early on. It was like, okay, don't start this shit, So I think practice more so than the other positions is going to really weigh in heavily because you can really dictate how many kicks they have. Whereas if you want to see who's winning the left guard battle, you can designate hey, this guy's going to play 25 snaps. This guy's going to play 25 snaps, right? Or this guy's going to play a possession with the starters. This guy's going to play a possession with the starters. All right. And see how these guys grade out, right? So anyway, kicking competition ended with both guys ending it on high notes. We'll see what happens with that as we get into the summer. So I want to start with DQ's press conference, and then we'll work our way to the video that I was referencing. Let me give you the title of this video. The title of this video is, it's called Dan Quinn Breaks Down His Own Coaching Process. It's called Process. And it's, matter of fact, I am going to throw the link to this video in the comment section right now. And I'm going to put it in the description of the video that we are currently doing right now, just so those of you who haven't watched, you'll have an opportunity to do so. And I really think that this is a really, really great look at DQ and like how we got to the point where we are this off season, because Dan Quinn, you know, did almost a 180 this off season, and I've been lauding and praising him for it. I think that he deserves a ton of credit for what he has done this offseason. I think he deserves a ton of credit. And that this video has restilled even more hope that Dan Quinn is the long-term answer as the head coach of the Washington Commanders. We'll get to that in a bit. I want to start with his press conference, though. So his final minicamp press conference, his final press conference of the offseason, next time we hear from head coach Dan Quinn, it will be training camp time for the Washington Commanders. And he talked about the beginning of his press conference. He started by talking about a couple of scouts who are calling it quits. You're talking about well over 50 years of scouting experience between the two guys that are going to retire. And so he started off by giving them some love and giving them a shout out. And then he transitioned to basically what he had been telling us about what minicamp was going to signify, which was going to be an opportunity for some young guys, which we saw today with Ethan Kaliak-Manis and Sam Hartman taking all of the team reps. It was going to be an opportunity for guys that hadn't gotten as many reps to go out and have an impact and show what they can do and get the coaches to take notice, so that when they start putting together their plan for training camp as to who's getting these reps, like the ones aren't going to take all the reps. The twos aren't going to take all the reps. They're going to take a vast majority of them, the ones in the twos, but the threes are going to get some reps. Who's going to be getting those reps? This is the time to kind of figure out who's going to get some of that run with the twos, who's going to get, you know, the run with the threes, who's going to barely see the field and not going to make the roster at all. Like, this is the time where you start to sort some of those things out. He highlighted several players, numerous players that had a really strong week this week in terms of mandatory minicamp, taking advantage of the opportunity of getting more reps. Here were the names that he mentioned, right? And this was unsolicited. He brought these guys up, right? He started off by shouting out TJ Mag, right? Always good to hear TJ Mag's name. He doesn't count against the roster because he is a international pathway player. So being a part of the IPP, he could be here as long as they would like him to stay here, right? So let him continue to develop and see if it turns into anything. If it doesn't, okay, cool, right? No skin off of their backs. He mentioned Jay-Z, right? The first time I think I've ever heard him call Johnny Newton Jay-Z, right? Jerzon is his real first name. So he called him Jay-Z, and he said he had a really strong week. He singled out Kane Madrano and Jordan McGee as two guys that stepped up at the linebacker positions. He then transitioned to the offensive side of the football and Talked about a couple of receivers and Jaden Bradley, who his name keeps coming up. I keep telling you, that's my guy in terms of the UDFAs. Between Drew Stevens and Jaden Bradley, those are the two guys. Now, Bradley doesn't have a chance to make the roster, whereas Drew Stevens does. But Bradley is a candidate to be on this team's practice squad. I liked him coming out of UNLV. I'm shocked that he didn't get drafted, to be honest with you. I'm pretty sure there was a reason why teams passed on him altogether. I just felt like he was worthy of a late round flyer by someone because the talent is clearly there for me. No, he's not a burner. Probably a guy that, won't test well necessarily, but the height, the weight, the, catch radius, the ability to go and get the football at its highest point. There was just a lot that I liked. I even liked the run after catch from Jaden Bradley. And as a guy with a 6'4" frame, just felt like someone should have taken a flyer on this kid. Glad that he's here in Washington. DQ brought him up yet again as a player that he thinks continues to show growth this offseason. Van Jefferson, he mentioned him yet again. Not a surprise that Van Jefferson came up. This is Van Jefferson week. Why wouldn't Van Jefferson's name come up on Van Jefferson week? So those are all the guys that DQ mentioned as to having really strong mandatory minicamp weeks. Then he isolated two particular players, two particular newcomers as guys that have had a tremendous spring this entire offseason. And on the offensive side, he mentioned Rachaad White as the guy that he really has been super impressed with. And then on the defensive side, he mentioned Kaylavon Chason. He said both of those guys have brought tremendous energy, excellent work habits, guys that have really taken the opportunities that they've been given and maximized them. And they stand for everything that the Commanders, embody. And he even harkened back to those players a little bit further into his press conference when he talked about the changes that have happened to this roster. He went back to those two players as guys that are symbolic of what they're looking for free agents that they are bringing into the organization. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on because I think it ties into some of the conversations that we've been having about two guys in particular. Not that either one of their rap sheets are completely clean, but I think one is a little bit different from the other. So those are two names that he brought about and talked about them standing out as new guys in the building that have quickly assimilated to the culture and they feel like have a chance to be huge parts of the success that the team will have this season. Then he was asked about the positions that he felt were better this spring that have been upgraded from last year's 2025 roster. And it's funny because Candy and I had a conversation last night. If you haven't watched the stream with Candy Waller and myself on Seawall Wednesdays, that was an epic stream last night. That was so much fun. Me and Candy, just shared a ton of laughs. Candy dropped some gems on our melon. And one of the conversations we brought up towards the end of the show was the running back position. And she said someone had asked her a question that she didn't have the answer to quite yet, which was, at this time last year and this time this year, is the running back's position better? And she's like, I don't know the answer to that. I feel like the answer is yes, but she's got boots on the ground. She's seen these running backs, and there hasn't been a ton of Bill to this point. And I think that makes a huge difference. But if Bill is healthy, and the easy way for me to just compare and contrast last year's running back group to this year is you just take one player and you look at the role that he's going to assume this year, and you just compare him to the guy that's going to assume that same role, this year, right? So last year, the physical power back was Chris Rodriguez. This year, it's Fat Man. I think advantage Fat Man, right? Last year, your third down back, your pass catching, pass protecting, all-purpose back was Austin Eckler. This year, it's Rachaad White. You can say that's a wash if you'd like. I really liked Austin Eckler. I like the role he carved out for himself here. But I also feel like Rachaad White is a little bit younger. He's a little bit more dynamic, I believe, not as necessarily breaking tackles, but I think he is a more dynamic pass catcher up the field. I think Eckler is more of a around the line of scrimmage guy. You're not going to see Eckler catching a wheel route up the sideline 30 yards down the field. Not that he's incapable. That's just not what they asked him to do. I think you're going to see that from Rachaad White in this offense. You're going to see Rachaad White get out of the backfield. It wasn't often they asked Austin Eckler to run an arrow route over the middle of the field like we've seen in Detroit a lot with Jahmyr Gibbs, especially on fourth downs. I think you can see that with Rachaad White, where he runs a Texas route. He runs an angle route and gets up the field. And if there's no one in the middle of the football field and he's able to break down that linebacker that has him in one-on-one coverage and races over the middle of the field, I think you're going to see them, hit him in that particular space. But you can call that a wash if you'd like. And then you look at year one Bill versus year two Bill. I think there's no competition. Year two Bill is light years ahead of year one Bill, as it should be the case. And then there was no one, and you still have obviously Jeremy McNichols, a year older, but there was no one else in the running back room that resembled a Jerome Ford. Like, the running back room is way better this year to me than it was last year. But again, still got to see it, right? DQ said the positions that he feels better about, like that have shined during this spring portion of offseason activities: running back, wide receiver, outside linebacker / edge rusher. And I know we've talked about, at least two of those positions in particular. I don't think we necessarily added running back into that conversation. I think linebacker was the position that took running back's place in terms of upgrades. When we talked about which position groups were the most upgraded on this roster, wide receiver was definitely in the conversation. I think linebacker was near the top of the list, if not at the top. But for me, it's always been, and it remains, edge rusher. And DQ basically said edge rusher is ridiculous, right? But he started with the running back position, and he said, we feel like we have guys that are so versatile that can do so many different things. And he said one of the things that we were really excited about this particular week, mandatory minicamp, is that we were able to then get some of these running backs exclusive work on kick return. And we keep hearing Bill and Rachaad White as potential kick returners. Someone else is going to be back there alongside Luke McCaffrey. We know Luke has one of the two kick return spots. They love the idea of putting a running back there. I continue to challenge you on how many teams around the league are putting starting running backs back to return kickoffs. I can't think of any. All right. There are plenty of teams that have running backs back there returning kicks. We were one of the teams last year, but I can't recall a team putting their starting running back out there to return kickoffs. I could be wrong about that. I just don't recall any team doing that. So you keep telling me about Bill getting back there and how you didn't get to explore that with him last year, but now you feel like you're getting an opportunity to do that. I'm like, is he the starter or isn't he the starter? Because if he's the starter, you can't put him back there on kickoff returns, right? And I don't really want to see Rachaad White back there because I don't think that's going to go for a touchdown. I already don't think Luke McCaffrey is capable of running it back for a touchdown. At least give me the other guy that has a chance that if there's a seam and he hits it, he can go. Rachaad White's not going anywhere either, which is why they probably want to put Bill back there. But that's why I want Bill on offense, not on special teams. They got to find someone else to be able to do that, basically, is what I feel. Like, figure out someone else that can return kickoffs. Don't want to see Bill back there in that capacity. And I would prefer not to see Rachaad White back there either. But if I had to choose between the two, yeah, put Rachaad White back there, right? Put him back there. But anyway, he talked about the running back position, and its depth and how he feels really good about that group. Then he went to the wide receiver position, and we all know that the wide receiver position is light years better than it was last year. I mean, last camp, again, I can't stress this enough, and I know you're probably tired of hearing this, but last year during camp, we had guys, like Michael Gallup, KJ Osborne, and Chris Moore in camp. I mean, it was a shit show. And there was no Terry McLaurin to boot, right? It was a shit show. It was a total shit show last year at receiver. And we should have known. Noah Brown wasn't healthy all summer. Terry was holding out due to a contract dispute. And these were the receivers that we were going to war with in camp. And the defense was kicking ass every week. And we saw how ass the defense was, right? Defense was kicking the offense's ass every week, every day, rather, because we had no receivers. And yet we were so blinded by the 12-5 season that we had previous that we elected to ignore the elephant in the room. The signs were all there that this shit was all bad. And yet we just, we got Debo. Terry will be back at some point, and so will Noah Brown, and we'll be fine. And no, we weren't fine. No, we weren't fine. So this year, having Terry back, bringing Diami back, having Traylon Burks in-house and having him have a full offseason with us, having Luke McCaffrey in year 3, having Jalen Lane in year 2, but more importantly, drafting Antonio Williams, who is going to be Terry McLaurin's sidekick. And then bringing in a veteran like Van Jefferson gives you real depth, gives you real opportunities for the offense to stress the defense, for us to get real practice work in, and iron sharpening iron now, right? So you can say what you want about the receiver position, whether it's incomplete or not. It's way better than it was last year. And I know the bar was extremely low last year. I am well aware. Still, it is way better this year than it was last year. And again, it's not done yet. We still think it's incomplete and that more help may be on the way at some point in the form of Brandon Ayuk. And then he mentioned outside linebacker. And he didn't get into specifics, but he basically said, look, man, this group is so much improved. He said, we love what we've seen so far from Adafe Owe, K'Lavon Chason, and Josh Josephs. These are 3 new acquisitions that have been brought in to go along with some of the guys that have already been here that we really liked already as is. That's a really strong group. And we've talked about this. It's such a deep group. It's such a talented group to the point now where a guy like Javonte Jean-Baptiste, a guy that we were going, I know, okay, I'm guilty. I can't put this on your jacket. I'll fess up to this. I didn't have shit, man. You got to understand where I was. You got to understand what my mental state was last year at the end of the season. I was so heavy on Drake Jackson, Drizzy Drake Jackson. I was so excited for him to play in that game on a Saturday against the Eagles late in the season. And it was nothing. It was a big nothing burger. Drake Jackson did nothing at the end of the season. He showed no flashes at the end. I was reaching. I was grasping at straws. We had nothing. Drake Jackson with a full off season. He's fully healthy now. Has no shot of making this roster if everybody's healthy. No shot. He's got no chance. That's what he's got. Neither does Javonte Jean-Baptiste. That's how stacked the edge rusher position is now, all of a sudden. So those are all the positions that DQ said he feels so much better about. He talked about it being important to see Bill take the next step. And I feel like we all feel like it's important for Bill to take the next step. I think that's why we heard Anthony Lynn during his media scrums last week really emphasizing that Bill needs to get back on the field, and not like Bill was holding out or something like that. Was out of his control. He wasn't fully healthy. He was dealing with the soft tissue injury, but the fact remained he was missing valuable time, right? For him to, you can do all of the, mental reps that one can, withstand, but the real execution comes when you're able to get out there and get physical reps. And he wasn't able to do that. And you could hear the disappointment in Anthony Lynn's voice when he talked about Bill not being available. So it was good for him to get back out there this week. And I've already said this, and I'm going to continue to bang this drum the entirety of the summer. Our running back room, for as improved as it is not what we want it to be without Bill. Bill is the X factor in that room. And if Bill isn't healthy, if he's not holding on to the football, if anything happens where Bill doesn't take that next step, for whatever reason, our running back room suffers because of it. It suffers. Big time. Big time. He's the one guy in that room that has the ability to take it the distance at any point. He's got the home run hitting ability. Nobody else in that room does. No one else in that room does. DQ talked about kickoff returners, and I talked about this already, that he talked about the running backs being back there, but he also mentioned, Luke McCaffrey being a guy that has shown the ability to run those kickoffs back like a running back. So we know Luke's going to be back there. That's no secret. Who's going to join him is the real conversation. And we've been told other guys that have been fielding punts and kickoffs and things of that nature throughout OTAs and into mandatory mini camps. So it's not a real surprise as to the suspects that are going to be back there. But I just every year I feel like we're having the same conversation about kick returner, and I'm sick of it. I really would like them, and I thought we were handling this with Jalen Lane's arrival. I thought he was going to be able to do both. And for whatever reason, and I think I know why, because he doesn't run like a running back. Jalen Lane doesn't. And this kickoff return favors guys that run the football. That's why Debo was so dynamic back there, because he runs like a running back. And Jalen Lane doesn't, you know. So he's not as good as a kickoff returner as he is a punt returner, which I still struggle with that, even though I know it's two different plays. He struggles as a kick returner. We saw that last year. He just wasn't comfortable back there. So they're not going to put him back there, I don't think. So here we are having this discussion. Who else is going to be back there returning kickoffs? We know how important it is. You put the wrong guy back there, ball can end up on the turf. You know, it happened in the NFC Championship game. We, took a lot of goodwill from Jeremy McNichol to overcome some of you wanting him off the team after he fumbled right before the half against the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC Championship game. A lot of you turned on him at that point. You can't just put anybody back there. So that's going to be an interesting conversation throughout the summer. Then he was asked how much of the offense has already been installed. Like, where are we in that process? Because Jaden yesterday said, I've got a long way to go in terms of, mastering this offense. And DQ clarified that statement. He's like, 80% of the offense has been installed already. So we're pretty much done with the installation portion, which is, I'm actually shocked that they got that much done. I thought the number was closer to 50, like 60%. 80% means, we're going to get back together in late July. We're going to go over some things. To start, and then we're going to finish installing this offense. And then we're going to start really hammering home the things that we think we do well. And we're going to be ready to rock and roll come September 13th, week 1 on the road against Philadelphia. So they're really almost at the point where repetition is going to be the key, not installing, right? Not getting guys acclimated to what they're doing, but no, this is how we get down. This is how we're going to roll. These are the plays we're going to roll with. Now let's just keep, repeating them, repetition, so that it becomes second nature. And that's the portion that Jaden is referring to when he says, I've got a long way to go to master the offense. Is I know the playbook. Now it's about being comfortable enough and where everyone is. What's the answers when I see this coverage in this particular play? Where do I go if they take this read away versus this coverage? Because I've done it enough times. I've got enough time on task running this particular play that I know if it's cover 3, this is where I'm going. If it's cover 2, this is where, my eyes should get to immediately. If it's cover 4 or some kind of, zone blitz, here's where I go with the football. Here's my immediate answer. So that's what DQ basically said is, as we get to camp, then we'll start to, get the reps with a lot of these plays that have been installed already. He then talked about Jaden as a multiplier, kind of piggybacking off of that conversation and that question about where they were in the process of installing the offense. He said Jaden and his ability, his uncanny ability, and we talked about this yesterday, to mentally process the offenses quickly, to digest them and to be able to then regurgitate them is second. It's unlike anything Dan Quinn's ever seen, he said. And he said, this is the second time now, because it happened in 2024, where Jaden was able to, kind of master an offense very quickly. And he said he's done it again. And he said the thing that makes it so beneficial is that it allows Jaden to be a multiplier. Meaning, if I know the offense inside and out, guess what? Everybody else doesn't necessarily know the offense inside and out like I do. So he said Jaden's ability to get to the line of scrimmage and tell a receiver, hey, you're -3 split on this play, right? which is basically telling him, where he's lining up in relation to the end man on the line of scrimmage. Like, this is where your split is, right? On this particular play. Hey, remember, you got a motion here, when I get to this call in the cadence. Or, hey, remember, if we get this look, you do this. Or, hey, remember, you line up here, right? Just slightly staggered from him. Like, he can tell a guy, or if a guy comes out of the huddle and he doesn't know where to go, hey, you got to post on this one, right? Make sure you break it off at 12, right? Because he understands the offense so well. He can then relate that to others who may not know it as well, not be as sharp with the offense yet, which is human nature, which is to be expected. Like, what he's doing is not normal, right? He is very unique in the ability to be able to get the offense down as quickly as he has. So his ability to be able to help other guys out makes him a multiplier in DQ's eyes. He talked about the coaching growth this offseason and how he's seen the growth from the end of the season to the hiring portion to about April the 20th, which was like his first cutoff. And then from, April 21st to now, June 18th, there's like two portions, that they broke it into. And he's like, we really saw a lot of growth from the coaches that were here. And then conversely, the coaches that have been brought on, and their ability to grasp either the offense or the defense that they're coaching, and then be able to then take that information and relay it to these players. So he talked about the growth with the coaches and how important that has been. He then talked about his message to the players, right? Obviously, the players are going to have 35 days away from the facility to do whatever they please with that time. And DQ, while he encourages them to get away from football, spend time with your family, he's like, yo, I need you to come back in the best shape of your life. And I need you to understand that real gains were made here. We took some massive steps forward. We made huge strides. We took, we had some huge strides that were made. Don't mess that up. And he called it the drift, right? He called it the drift. And what the drift represents is negating the gains that have been made. Going back to default settings, essentially. He's like, you're not here within the structure of these walls. You're not having to show up here at 8 o'clock. You're not, showing up at, the weight room at 9 on Tuesday. You're not going to the cafeteria at 10:30 to get something to eat. You're not hitting the practice field at 12. You're not getting into the meeting room at 4. There's no structure. The gains that we have made can easily be wiped away if you go home and you sit on your ass, or you go spend time with your family in Cabo or St. Lucia, and you don't put in the work to come back in tip-top shape. So he's like, take the time to get away from football, spend time with your family, but make sure you putting in that work. Do not allow the drift to happen where you revert back to default settings. And then he talked about the catch that we saw from Van Jefferson yesterday. I said on stream yesterday, it wasn't a catch. And somebody in the comment section was like, Louie, you tripping. That was a catch, bro. He got his foot down. And I'm like, one, he didn't get his first foot down. Okay, that was on the white. Two, even if you thought he got the foot down, all right, let's just say he did get it down. The ball moved when he hit the ground. He used the ball as a way to brace his fall, and the ball literally moved in his hand. It's not a catch. And he said they had a referee come up and look at that play with them, and they had the whole room, basically buzzing. Everybody's like, it's a catch, it's a catch. Some people like, no, it's not a catch. A lot of people like, yeah, it's a catch. Defensively, the guys were like, it ain't a catch. No, it's not. All the offensive guys, it's a catch, it's a catch. They ultimately landed on it wasn't a catch. I told you it wasn't a catch. You could see that he didn't get his first foot in. And two, that ball moved when it hit the ground. So It was not a catch. Then DQ was asked about the position battles of center and place kicker. Everything that I've tried to dismiss this offseason keeps coming up. And I'm at the point now where I'm not going to dismiss anybody. I'm not going to dismiss anything. I just like the third QB, battle, right? QB3 battle. I've dismissed this at every turn. And then you hear John Keim like, Sam Hartman's ahead of Ethan Kaliak-Manis. Duh, I would expect that to be the case. If not, Sam Hartman can get the hell out of here. You don't even show up for training camp if you can't beat out a 7th round pick, as a rookie and you're going into year 3. Just get out of here right now, right? Don't even show up for camp. But I still believe that Ethan Kaliak-Manis, they spent the 7th round pick on him. Doesn't mean he's got to make the roster. Obviously, they can cut him, put him on the practice squad, and then next year it could be the year he makes the roster. But I still think he's going to make the roster. They don't want to cut any of their draft picks if they don't have to. And we saw how awful Sam Hartman was last year. Maybe this offensive scheme fits him better, right? Maybe last year, the offensive scheme, and yes, our receivers sucked ass, but he didn't even give him a chance. It wasn't even about the receivers last year. Hartman didn't give him a chance. That said, I still think Sam Hartman's not winning that competition, but it's a competition, and I can't dismiss it as if it's not. Van Jefferson not making this team. I've been adamant about that. And I'm still adamant that if you add Brandon Ayuk to this roster, or any veteran that's going to make this team, it's hard for Van Jefferson to crack this roster. But I can't dismiss the fact that Van Jefferson may make this football team for other unforeseen circumstances that may occur. Like, I have to, and he's a good football player, by the way, like Van Jefferson is. I don't mind if he's on this roster, but I've been very dismissive of that. I've been very dismissive of the center battle, and I still am to a degree, because I still don't envision anyone but Nick Allegretti starting at center in week 1 when we take on the Philadelphia Eagles. I can't imagine Julian Good-Jones or the rookie Matt Golban beating out Nick Allegretti. I just don't see that happening. So, but he talked about the center battle, and he basically said that, all the guys have done a really good job, and, they're going to get reps. The pads have not come on yet, so it's hard to assess, yada, yada, yada. Ain't no battle at center as far as I'm concerned, but we'll see. Like, that's the one where I kind of like roll my eyes, like, whatever. Even QB3, I could see it. I could see a real battle formulating, right? If we get to the 3rd quarterback, we're screwed anyway. So what difference does it make? Center is a different beast altogether. Like, if Nick Allegretti gets beat out, we're in trouble, because that means he's ass. Forget about the guy that beats him out. It means we're ass at center. We're in trouble, because Julian Good-Jones has been here for 17 years, and he ain't done jack dilly poo squat. He ain't even made the roster. All of a sudden, I'm supposed to believe that Julian Good-Jones is now this viable option at center after all these years. Maybe, again, and this is the thing that I haven't factored into the discussion, is maybe this offense suits his skill set better. That's a very, real possibility. Still don't believe that makes him all of a sudden a guy that has to be on the roster. I don't buy that. So, and then the place kicking competition, I told you already today, both kickers made all 6 of their kicks. That's going to go down to, I believe, the wire in camp. It'll be the last battle that I believe, unless one of these kickers completely vomits all over himself. At that point, then, if the other guy's kicking the football well, we got our answer. But if both of these guys are solid, I think this is the battle that goes down to the wire. It may even not be settled until the final preseason game. It's still, because unlike the other positions where if there's a battle, it requires some form of continuity, and you want to know who's the winner of that battle so you can move forward and start to gain some of that continuity. You don't need any continuity for place kicking. Your job is isolated. The operation can run without you. You can be dropped into the operation, right? The operation really exists between long snapper and holder, right? That's the real operation. Your job is just to kick the damn football. Now, you can tell the holder, hey, here's how I like it. I like it, laces out, slightly tilted to the left. Cool, right? Now, I know how you like the football when you're going to kick it, but, I mean, that's an easy adjustment. There's no operational, adjustments that have to be made if one kicker is there versus the other. So you could literally have that kicking competition go all the way to the third preseason game, and it's not going to affect anybody but those two kickers. I think that's going to be the last battle that gets settled this summer. But DQ basically said, just like all the rest of the battles, it's going to be determined this summer. I think we heard all we needed to hear from Larry Izzo last week, where he basically said consistency is what's going to win that position battle. And also, don't discount the ability to kick the football off. That's going to be huge too. Then DQ, after that question, there was a follow-up where he basically was asked, like, when do you decide on when these battles are going to be, over? Like, he said, ideally, position battles should be decided by the second preseason game. I've told you guys this already because that's the dress rehearsal. It used to be the third preseason game. Now it's the second one. You need to know who the starting left guard is by the second preseason game, because you're going to put Jaden out on the field in that game. And you can't be still decide, well, let's see what Chris Paul, if you don't believe in Chris Paul, you shouldn't be putting him out there with the starters, because you don't want him to be, don't want Jaden to be, on the field with a liability, right? So you're going to put the guys out there that you think are going to start. You're going to have your starting left guard out there, which is going to give you your complete starting offensive line. Same thing with center, right? You're not putting Julian Good-Jones out there if you think he's not capable of being the starter when Jaden's out there. So you're going to know the left guard battle, the center battle by that time. I think QB3 will be decided after that game, not going into it. I think the kicking battle will probably go all the way to the third and final preseason game versus the Ravens, if I had to guess. Any other battles that may be taking place, if they're of note, those should be settled by the second preseason game. Ideally. Not always is that the case, but ideally it should. I thought this was an interesting conversation. So this kind of ties into the conversation between Ayuk and Stephon Diggs, and which of these guys would they bring in? And this has kind of been my stance on this the entire time. DQ was asked, basically, at this point of the season, you've seen the roster, you've seen what you have, what you maybe don't have, what's available in free agency at this point. Knowing what you know about the roster going into training camp now, are you more fixated on bringing guys in with the ability to fit in culture-wise, or are you more so hunting talent at this point of the offseason? And DQ was like, I told you about the two guys that I thought have done a tremendous job of assimilating themselves this offseason, in Caleb Chason and Rachaad White. Those are exemplary players and examples of what we're looking for as guys come in and fit into this culture and assimilate into the culture. Translation: we ain't looking to add any guys to this roster that aren't going to come in and fit into this locker room seamlessly without, baggage in terms of off the field. And I think that lends itself to Brandon Ayuk being here versus Stephon Diggs. And again, much like Ayuk, we haven't heard anything negative about Stephon Diggs as a teammate, but we have seen him blow up on the sidelines. We've seen him get in the face of Josh Allen. Part of the reason they moved on from him in Buffalo is because there were a couple of sideline tirades aimed at Josh Allen when he didn't get the football. And it's the same reason the Panthers moved on from Steve Smith once upon a time when he was in Carolina with Cam Newton. They needed Cam Newton to be the alpha in that locker room. And as long as Steve Smith Sr. was still there, it was going to be hard for Cam Newton to assume the role of the ultimate voice in that locker room. Same thing with Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen in Buffalo. So they moved on from him. They're not looking for someone to necessarily come in here, and I don't want to say undermine Jaden, but, they're not looking for someone to come in here with that type of personality, I don't think. And then two, obviously, off the field, he's got a slew of issues, right? And you've got a high-profile relationship that's always causing drama. And I don't think they want any parts of that shit, to be honest with you. Which is why you end up hearkening back to Brandon Ayuk. You say what you want about Brandon Ayuk and some of the things that's going on social media. You got guys like Jarvis Landry questioning his sanity. You can call him crazy all you want, but like I said, the minute he's released by the 49ers and football starts, you're not gonna hear anything about Brandon Ayuk other than football. That's the way it's always been with him. We can't say that about Stephon Diggs. The social media circus that follows him doesn't ever shut off. So I don't think they're going to be looking at bringing in a guy like Stephon Diggs. That's just my personal opinion. I could be wrong about that. Brandon Coleman. I thought this was a great answer as it pertains to Brandon Coleman. So Darnell Stapleton, who's the new offensive line coach, was promoted from assistant offensive line coach, a position he held for the last 2 seasons prior to this offseason, said that Brandon Coleman could play all 5 positions. While that may be true, if you're a jack of all trades, you're a master of none. That's usually how that works. And when you spread yourself that thin, if they're trying you at center and you're getting some guard reps and you're getting tackle reps, you're not allowed to be great at any of them. You might be good or solid at all of them, but you're not allowed to be great because you're not getting enough reps at any of them. And so DQ said, yeah, no, we love Brandon and we think he can play all 5 positions. He's athletic enough to play center. We've seen him play guard and we know he can play tackle. But we really want to have him hone in on guard, left guard in particular. We really want to give him the chance. And he said it'd be a disservice to him and it would be bad on our part to not give him the opportunity to just lock in on playing left guard. And I think that is so important for a guy like Brandon Coleman. Because last year they were cross-training him at both tackle spots, both guard spots. And that could have been part of the reason why he wasn't good enough at guard. He didn't get enough reps. They were asking him to do. Remember, and well, I don't think last year they were trying him at center. I think that was more of a this offseason thing. Because remember, the conversation started about, could Brandon Coleman be this team starting center? I was like, no, it's not the team starting center. But DQ basically said, we're going to give him a chance just to focus on left guard. Bravo. Bravo. He then talked about Durante Jones's superpower, and which is teaching. And he talked about players raving about how Durante simplifies the game, how he takes complicated defensive schemes and breaks them down to the most fundamental, rudimentary concepts so that anybody can understand what it is they're doing and why they're doing it. And the players have been extremely complimentary of him. They've loved Durante and his ability to communicate. We know he's a top-notch communicator. And DQ said that he's loving the ability of Durante Jones to be able to communicate to the players, but not only the players, but to the coaching staff as well, to get them to be able to then teach the scheme the way that he's trying to have it play out on the field. So he talked about, Durante Jones's superpower. And then he finished up the press conference basically talking about desperation and hunger. And that's the perfect segue into the 21-minute video that he did with Evan Washburn of CBS Sports. And he talked about the lack of desperation and hunger last year. And let's just go ahead and segue into that video. It was DQ Unfiltered is what it was. And I needed this. I needed this. I can't speak for anybody else. I needed this shit because last year I questioned, where did my DQ go? Where did my coach go? That guy that I saw on the sideline last year, that wasn't DQ. That was some bald-headed bullet Bob posing as DQ. Because the guy that I knew in 2024 who let his nutsack hang, who was as aggressive as any coach in the league and threw caution to the wind and was always playing to win instead of playing not to lose, that guy didn't show up last year. I don't know who the hell that was. The guy that I watched last year on the sidelines couldn't control the game, botched the clock, mismanaged timeouts, didn't know when to throw the challenge flag, and was timid and scared to go for it on fourth down. Would rather punt, settle for field goals, wasn't looking to be aggressive. I don't know who the hell that guy was last year. I needed the faith in DQ to be restored. He took a step. Remember, I talked about it. I said DQ took a step this offseason to restoring the faith that me as a fan needs to have in him, because you start to allow yourself to wonder about the possibilities of, what if David Blau is the next prodigy? What if David Blau's the next big thing as a play caller in this league? What if? Maybe we should bypass DQ as the coach and promote David Blau. Can we afford to let him leave if he's like that? You start to allow your mind to wander to those types of scenarios because of the shit show that was last year and DQ's role in it. He was a huge part of this team's lack of success. We questioned him at every turn, and it was all warranted last season. Starting out by hiring Durante Jones and David Blau, and then kind of reshaping the coaching staff, promoting Darnell Stapleton, going out and hiring DJ Williams as the new quarterback's coach, bringing in Coach Henney as the defensive line coach, demoting, Daryl Tapp, but keeping him on staff, but demoting him to assistant defensive line coach. Just making all of these moves, promoting David Rye, bringing in a new tight ends coach from Arizona, seemingly pressing all the right buttons. It was a strong statement by DQ. And we'll get to that. We'll get to where I'm going with that, because this was profound for me. I needed this. DQ press this DQ video. I needed this. So first thing that happens in the video is he walks up to Evan Washburn, who's kind of sitting in the lobby waiting on DQ, and DQ's going to take him on like a little mini tour of the building. There's a lot of imagery around the building, DQ isms, if you will, things that are symbolic of what they stand for. We've seen some of the artwork on the wall. One of the slogans in year one was, the most important fight is the one that you're in, right? We've seen that. And there are so many others that we saw, right? But he stopped in front of this message board, basically, which was the Commander Standard. And I'm gonna give you the exact Commander Standard board, because I don't want to mess it up. So the standard, this board in in one of the hallways, it's a major board. You can't miss it. It says the standard, and it starts with our brotherhood. And as a matter of fact, I'm gonna just throw it up on the screen real quick. So you can see it. We can go through it real quick. Take us 2 seconds to go through it. But I thought it you know, it's everything that they stand for. You may think it's cheesy, it's corny, whatever, but this is what they stand for, and I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at what they stand for. And last year, it kind of felt like we got away from some of the things that we, you know, represented here in Washington. So this is the standard right here, right? Let's go ahead and make this thing completely big. And this is the standard right here. It starts with our brotherhood. The first thing is it's one theme, competition. And we hear this all the time with DQ, all the coaches, players, to a man in that building. Everything starts with competition. That is the building block of the standard in Washington, is we're going to compete at everything. And DQ said, it ain't just me against you. He said, that's more of some summertime shit. That's more training camp. He's like, right now, it ain't just competition against me and you. It's, you know, me driving you to be better. You know, me showing up early, staying late in the weight room, me being competitive in the film study, you know, asking questions that force guys to think outside the box. When you think about competition, it's competing at every single turn, he said. And that's what they want to be about. He said, then there's one rule: protect the team at all costs. Right? Meaning, don't embarrass us. Represent us the right way. And we've seen, you know, them quickly pivot from someone that didn't protect the team. The best example of this was the first year they got here in 2024 in Brandon McManus. They signed McManus to a 3-year deal. He was supposed to be the answer at the kicking position for them. We weren't supposed to be having these conversations. And right away, he's charged, or not charged. He has, you know, sexual misconduct levied against him. And the team was like, look, we just got out of the Dan Snyder era. We just got here. We cannot afford this shit. And they kind of got rid of him that quick. Protect the team. Don't put us in a position where we got to answer because of some bullshit you did, which is, again, why I don't see Stephon Diggs being here. Because Cardi B don't give a shit about the Washington Commanders. Okay. If Stephon Diggs does something to her that she doesn't like, she's not going to be thinking about the Commanders and what this is going to do to his career. She can give two shits about that. Right? One philosophy: ball is life. Now, that one is a bit controversial here, obviously, because we ain't forced turnovers. The ball has not been life. If that's the case, we've been dead for a long time. That's the running joke around here, is that if the ball is life, we dead. Dead, I tell you. But hopefully with Durante Jones coming in here and instilling this new defense that's supposed to create chaos and havoc, hopefully the ball becomes life, and we are breathing it repeatedly this season, right? Hopefully the ball is very plentiful and life is abundant this year. And then one identity, BMF. And we've heard DQ say this. It's one of his favorite cuss words. He loves the F word, right? And the MF in particular. He loves the MF word. And he said he loved Javon Kinlaw's press conference. They played the little clip. He's like, it's the best one I've ever seen, you know. And I can't watch that Javon Kinlaw. So this is the standard right here. I can't watch that Javon Kinlaw presser anymore without the social media quote from someone that says, if this season don't go well, and then you play the Javon Kinlaw clip and he's like, shit, you know, Payne could go, and he just, you know, Owe can go, Chason can go, and he's just listing all of the guys that they brought in here, all the guys on the D line, and I can't get that shit out of my mind. I cannot get that out of my head. So every time I see that Javon Kinlaw snippet, I'm always thinking about that. But this season's gonna go well, so it won't. The context won't be in that space. But he started with that conversation. Then they went to DQ's office and they sat down and they talked about. And I was fascinated. I think this is a byproduct of social media now. I'm so hyper. And you know what? I've always been hyper vigilant, so I can't say that. But while they're talking, I had to rewind the video several times because my eyes are fixated on the wall art at the top, which is pretty dope, which is Ball is Life and all of this stuff. And I'm like, that looks like Jeremy Reeves. I hope that's not Jeremy Reeves, but it looks like Jeremy Reeves. And then I see all of the helmets lined up on the side. DQ's got a bevy of helmets and a bunch of Washington helmets, a Redskins helmet, a bunch of Commanders helmets. Then there's one at the bottom with a spear, and I'm like, huh. And I'm like fixated on that. Like, could we be getting that helmet at some point? That looks a little bit updated. I don't know, right? But I'm, not paying attention, so I had to rewind the video. They also, before he got to the office, there's this picture of Abraham Lincoln dressed up in, Commanders merch, right? Swag, if you will. And he said his wife, got it for him. And it's Abraham Lincoln as a bad mother effer. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that one. I don't know. Abraham Lincoln, with a whole swag pack. And I don't know how I feel about that. Right? I don't know how I feel about Abe Lincoln with drip. Got the hand tat of BMF, right? Got the icy, whistle around his neck. I don't know how I feel about, swagged out Abe Lincoln. But then they go sit down in the office, and, I thought that Evan Washburn did a great job of asking pertinent questions. And he talked about last year. And that's the part of this thing. And he said a lot of good things. He talked about a lot of different things. But the thing that stood out the most was two things stood out. One, and this is the moment where I said, my coach is back. DQ is back. We're back. Is when he said, I am a guy that is bold. And Evan Washburn had brought up the fact that, hey, you brought in two new coordinators who ain't never called a play before. After the season you just had, like, what was the thought process behind that? And, I've been lauding and praising DQ for that. And he said, by nature, I'm a bold guy. It's just who I am. And I stopped the video right there when he said that, because I too am a bold person. I live by the adage, fortune favors the bold, right? I have a buddy of mine who, he's brilliant, man, but he's not a risk taker. He's one of those guys that is so calculated and everything's well thought out. And if he can't see the end game and a victory for himself, he won't do it. And I can't say that is cowardice, because that's his process, right? Like, I need to be able to see a path to victory or I'm not doing it. For me, I'm bold. I'm betting on me every single time. So if you tell me, hey, I can't guarantee you victory here, but you got a shot. I'm betting on me. I'm better than you, and I'll figure it out. I may not be better than you right now, but by the time we get to the end of this shit, I will be. I'm betting on me. And DQ basically was like, I'd lost that edge last year. And he said, everyone wanted to give us the excuse of injuries. And yeah, we had injuries, but it was more than that. And when he talked about being bold, I'm like, DQ, you were bold in 2024. You went to Cincinnati in week 3 when nobody thought you were going to win the game. We thought it was a kamikaze mission. We thought we were being served up on a platter for Joe Burrow and company to get their shit off. It was the first game that T. Higgins was back. They had struggled on offense to start the first 2 games of the season. Remember, they lost to New England in week 1, a team that went on to win 2 games that entire season, I believe, right? 3 games. They won more than that because we ended up with the second pick. No. New England won, what, 2 or 3 games last year, 2024? How many games did they win with Jacoby Brissett and then Drake May? They didn't win very many. I know that much. They were ass. Anyway, everybody thought they was going to destroy us. I remember it like it was yesterday. Troy Aikman talking about how this is going to be a coming out party for Joe Burrow. Our defense hadn't played well the first 2 weeks. And Joe Burrow throws a touchdown pass on the first possession to Jamar Chase. And I'm thinking, oh, shit, here we go. Right. And on the opening offensive possession, after they took a 7-0 lead, we came back and DQ said, F it. It's 4th and 6. F it. Offense, stay on the field. Jaden, figure that shit out, bro. Found Zach Ertz, first down. We go down. We score a touchdown. He hits Luke McCaffrey. That was another 4th down on that possession. The first one was to Zach Ertz. The second one, the Zach Ertz 4th down was later in the game. That first 4th down was the one he was throwing to Noah Brown, and Luke McCaffrey intercepted that bitch and took off and ran down to about the 1-yard line. And Brian Robinson Jr. ran it in a play or 2 later, and we tied the game up. And we never looked back because fortune favors the bold. And in 2024, DQ was as bold as it got. And he lost that edge in 2025. And he said he took a clip of OTAs from 2024. And he then took a clip from 2025's OTAs. And he showed the team. He showed his staff. Like he said, and I didn't include anybody that wasn't here last year because they ain't have nothing to do with it. Left them out of it, which is a good thing. Like, I'm not putting that baggage on them. They ain't got shit to do with what we did last year. It's brand new. We wiping the slate clean once they get here. But for all of y'all MFers that was here last year and the year before, y'all need to see this shit. Because this is how it starts. And he showed them a clip. And he said, look at the hunger and the desperation in 24. Now look at this same OTAs clip from 2025, and you look at the difference. And he said, and the thing that really stuck out, he said that it starts that way in May or June. And then it gets to August, he said July, and then it goes here. And then you get further away in September. And then by the time you're in October, you're all effed up. And you don't think about it like that. It's cumulative, right? It's like the broken windows theory, right? It's a perfectly good neighborhood. And then eventually someone, decides not to get their car fixed and they leave it on the public street. This is why in really good neighborhoods, you often see if you leave a car parked on the street that doesn't have a license plate or it's expired, they will put a tag on your car, which I hate when they do this. They put that stinking ass sticker on your car because even when you ready to get that shit off, that sticker is not coming off your goddamn car. You're gonna have to like literally scrape that bitch off and all the stickiness on the back, which is bullshit, right? But they stick that damn sticker on your car letting you know, hey, either get this shit off the city streets or update the damn license plates and registration, or we gonna tow this bitch. Why? Because of the broken windows theory, which is we're not gonna allow some piece of shit car to sit here on the side of the road in this really good neighborhood. Because eventually, if we let this car stand here, and then that car ends up having a flat tire and it looks bad, and then next thing you know, it's got a broken window, and then next thing you know, people see that and they're thinking, well, shit, I can then, leave some trash out on the floor, on the ground here, and then next thing you know, if there's graffiti somewhere, and then all of a sudden one of the lights don't work, and the light on the, on the street lights, and then all of a sudden you went from this pristine neighborhood to this neighborhood that doesn't feel safe. And it happened incrementally over time. That's basically what DQ was saying. Like, we went from not going as hard and as desperate in May to then getting to July, and then that not having the same sense of urgency, then getting to August and the shit not being where it needed to be, then getting to September and you're off base, and then you get to October and the shit's gone. And there's no turning back. It's too far gone. If you're reading this, it's too late. And that's what happened to our season. We was done by October. He said we didn't have the connection that we had in 2024 and 25. We weren't connected. We weren't urgent. We weren't desperate. We weren't bold. I said, yes, DQ, yes. He was spot on about all of it. And it was at that moment where he did that soul searching this offseason. And he talked about it at the end of the year, that we got to look like within, deep within, turn over every stone. We got to figure out what's going on. And they did. He had to get rid of one of his really good friends on the staff to upgrade the defense. He had to demote a guy that he really loves in Daryl Tapp to upgrade the defensive staff. He went out and hired Durante Jones, a guy that never called plays before. He upgraded the offense, had to move on from Cliff Kingsbury for the greater good of the offense, promote David Blau, who had never called a play before. Got rid of a guy, an O-line Bobby Johnson, who really ain't do shit wrong, but he didn't fit what we were trying to do. Never had coached outside, and never coached zone blocking scheme. So he had to get the hell up out of here. Promoted Darnell Stapleton, who was well-versed in that school of zone blocking. And, the list goes on and on and on. And he said, I had everybody that was here last year write down all of the shit that didn't go well, all the shit that they didn't do, we didn't do. And we put that shit into a waste paper basket and we burned that shit. It's the Steve Kerr telling the story of Phil Jackson during the Last Dance, their last gathering together when they won that last title and they knew it was over. And he said it was the most powerful shit he had ever been a part of. He said he had them all write something about their team. They read it. They threw it in a waste paper basket. They lit it on fire and they walked out of the office. DQ said they didn't, it wasn't as dramatic as that, but it was similar to that. That's probably where he got it from, to be honest with you. We're going to burn that shit and we're going to move on. DQ is a hell of a leader, man. And you can say what you want about him. You can say that it's not going to benefit Jaden long-term to not have a stable offensive coordinator. I agree. But DQ is absolutely the kind of leader that you can win and win big with in this league. And if things go well, he's not going anywhere. And he'll be a huge part of the reason why it goes well. A lot of people will try to bypass him and give the credit to David Blau or Durante Jones or whomever. Well, they're not here if Dan Quinn didn't have the foresight to give them an opportunity. So that counts for something, that you were the guy that identified them as ready for the opportunity and gave them a chance. That counts for something. You never want to be the smartest guy in the room. As a boss, you want to hire people that are just as, if not smarter than you. DQ might have done that this offseason. And it seems like that 2024 DQ is not only back, but I think he's better than ever. I think the 2026 version is so locked in because he knows we can't have another 2025. And he said, there's been a new standard set. He said, 2024, we were kind of up and down. We had just gotten, they had just gotten here. And so it was up and down. This year, he said, we just put on a hell of a spring, and this is the new standard. This is what it's supposed to look like. DQ is back. I think you're going to see an aggressive Dan Quinn. I think you're going to see them going for it on fourth downs a little bit more. I think you're going to see him be locked in, understanding game situations. He said we weren't clutch last year. He said that. We weren't clutch. You're damn right we weren't clutch. We blew it in the Chicago game. We blew it in the Miami game. We blew it in the Denver game last year. We weren't clutch. We had opportunities. And again, we didn't need to go anywhere but home. We were ass. But the opportunities were there. In certain games, they were there. We weren't clutch. Anyway, it was by far and away the best shit I've seen from DQ here. And it reinstilled confidence in the fact that he gets it. He gets it. Because last year it felt like a bunch of coach speak when he's like, we're going to figure this shit out. We won't leave any stone unturned. He literally did that this offseason. He didn't leave a single stone unturned. So as we head to training camp, as we head into this break, I'm here to tell you that as locked in as I am and as excited as I am, I'm that much more excited because I know DQ. The DQ that I, as a fan, felt like, oh my God, this guy gets it. In 2024 is back. And probably better than he was in 2024. Let's get to the comment section. But before we do that, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. Come back on the other side, and then we'll get to any comments, and then we'll get out of here. It's that time, people. The World Cup is upon us, and PrizePicks has you covered. Link is in the description of this video, where you can download the PrizePicks app, which is available in states like California, Florida, and Texas, to allow you to explore all the options that PrizePicks has available for you to game with the World Cup. All these opportunities you see in front of you, from shots on target to tackles and goals, are available for you to create a lineup that can allow you to take full advantage of the World Cup. Lots of opportunities over the next month and a half as the World Cup takes over center stage. Be a part of the action and play now on PrizePicks. Use the promo code HMA to get you an opportunity to play $5 and get $50 instantly in lineup bonuses when you use the promo code HMA. LouieTeeNetwork on PrizePicks is where you can find me. Enjoy the World Cup and do it with Prize Picks. Shout out to Prize Picks for sponsoring this stream. Let's get to the comment section. And we start with our guy, JP, John Perez Sports. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. John Perez Sports writes, I'm still not sure about Daniel effing Quinn, Lou. And that's fair. That's fair. He did something here that no other coach has done since Gibbs 1.0. And that's win more than 10 games in a single season. And he did something that no other coach has done here since Gibbs 1.0. Just take this team to the NFC Championship game. That counts for something with me. I can't just ignore that, sweep it under the rug. I know Jaden Daniels was a huge part of that, but DQ was too. To me, the jury is still out on him, and that's fair. That's fair. At least 5 will be healthy enough to carry us to wins. I'm not of the mindset of just discounting DQ's impact and his role in all of the success that we've had or haven't had. I think he's equally on the hook for the trials of last year and the tribulation of 2024. I think you have to be able to look at it from both, ends of the spectrum. And one outweighs the other. Yeah, last year was disappointing, but the high of 24 overshadows, to me, the disappointment. One just happened more recently. That's the only thing. If 5-12 was year one and the 12-5 was last year, you'd feel totally different. It just happened in reverse. That's all. Marissa Mullinex, been a member for 23 months. All right, Louie. What's going on, Marissa? Tell your brother Mark I said, what's up? It's always nice watching you. Hope that your family is good. Likewise. I think BA will be here a week before training camp. I hope so. That situation has been so funky and crazy that I can't say that I know what's going to happen. I can only hope. I can only hope. Command OGJ. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Command OGJ writes, Lou, love the CBS DQ video. It was awesome. Well worth the 22 minutes. Always learning and evolving in his approach. And he talked about that during the presser, during that video, that interview, where he's like, the NFL is constantly changing. He's constantly learning. And that's one of the things he loves. He said, did not love the matte mustard yellow and black W helmet in the background. That was more of like a Navy, like an ode to the Navy thing, I believe. Like when the naval base comes, every year we have the salute to service. I think that was like an ode to them. DQ's heavy on the military influence. He says, check it out. Glad they didn't choose that one. I think that was just a DQ, Navy prototype, right? That's what I think that was. I didn't love it either. I agree. Charles J. Willard. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Charles writes, I hope they know better than to mess with Bill. Everyone knows you don't mess with Bill. I think they know that they shouldn't mess with Bill. I'm not sure if they know that they shouldn't mess with Bill, but just in case they don't know, Charles. Don't mess with Bill. Hopefully they know. Hopefully they know. But they'll find out soon enough if they don't. If they don't. Anyway, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this installment of the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. Until then, I'm your man Louie T, signing off. I hope to see you guys here in a little bit. Commanders Kings should be kicking off here in the next 30 minutes or so. Hopefully, I'll see you for that. If not, I'll catch you on the flip side. Until then, I'm your man Louie T, signing off. Hey.